ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. So as you know, we have already started the discussion on the effects, what follows from avidya. As we have seen last time and before that also, that all the cause of all our problems is simply one, that is ignorance. We are in this mess only because we lack the right knowledge. And from this ignorance follows a lot of problems. This ignorance gives rise to a lot of problems. So again, we will just share some images. So here you can see, we have discussed all this, that these are the pain-bearing obstructions or the kleshas. First is avidya or ignorance, and from that asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, these follow. Asmita is egoism, we have discussed it last time. So three remain, that is raga, dvesha and abhinivesha, that is attachment, aversion and clinging to life. Attachment, aversion and clinging to life. These three we will discuss today. What is the nature of these three? So, we have seen that avidya kshetram uttaresham. Avidya is the kshetra, that is the source of all these that follow. So if avidya is there, only if avidya is there, then only we can have egoism. And when we have this egoism, then naturally it follows that because of that we like something, we don't like something. And because of this I, this false I, we cling to this I. And this false I leads to the identification with the body. We think the body to be ours. I am the body. And when anything happens to the body, we become afraid. That is the thing. That is called clinging to life. Please put on that light, this one, the switch is there. Yeah. So we will just discuss what are these and what do they mean. So another image I want to share. We have discussed egoism last time, but for those who are not there, just a very, very short recapitulation. So here we have seen last time. This is egoism. It is identification of the seer with the instrument of seeing. The seer is the Atman, the witness, and everything else is an instrument. The mind, body, organs, etc. So for some inexplicable reason, the seer, the Atman, identifies itself with those instruments. Sometimes it thinks it is the hand, sometimes it thinks it is the feet, sometimes it thinks it is the eyes, nose, etc. So when something happens to those instruments, we feel that something is happening to us. This is called identification. So now this identification is the cause of all our problems. So what did we learn last time? We saw Swami Vivekananda explaining this egoism in a very, very beautiful way in a few sentences. He says, the seer is really the self, the pure one, the ever holy, the infinite, the immortal. This is the self of man. And what are the instruments? What are the instruments of that self? 1 minute. The mind, the buddhi, the manas and all the organs, these are our instruments through which we see the external world. The problem arises when the self is identified with these instruments and gives rise to what is called egoism. This is in the expressions like I am the mind, I am thought, I am angry, I am happy. How can we be angry and how can we be sad? We say these things only when we think ourselves to be the mind. So Swami Vivekananda says that we should identify ourselves with the self that cannot change. If it is unchangeable, how can it be one moment happy and one moment unhappy? The self is formless, infinite and omnipresent. What can change it? It is beyond all law. What can affect it? Nothing in the universe can produce an effect on it. Yet, through ignorance, we identify ourselves with the mind and think that we feel pain or pleasure. This is the problem. And this gives rise to this feeling of I, this ignorance. And what is this I? We have seen, if analyzed, this I cannot stand. If you go try to find out what is this I, we cannot find it. Because who says this I? What is the source of this I? The self cannot be the source. The self is unchanging, the eternal witness. It is not the source or cause of anything. That cannot give rise to the feeling of I. Then we say what other thing is there? The other thing left is the mind and body, etc. The mind and body are completely inert. Anything which is inert can never have the feeling that I exist. This chair cannot say I exist because it is inert. We have to have consciousness to have that feeling. So this I, what is the source? Atman cannot be the source, mind and body cannot be the source. But when they come together, when they are identified, some magic occurs. It comes out from nowhere, like they take out some pigeons out of some hat or something. Thin air, they take out something. So similarly, this egoism appears. And since when we analyze it, we cannot find the source, we can assume that this egoism actually does not exist. But it seems to exist. And it creates all the problems. So what all problems are created by this avidya? The first is egoism. We have seen what egoism is in detail. And because of this egoism, the self, when it identifies with the mind and body, then what happens? The mind may like something. The body may like something. The self thinks that it also likes some things or dislikes something. So one after another they follow in sequence. Now, for liking, what in English we say liking or attachment, the Sanskrit word is raga. Raga means attachment. So this is one of the effects of egoism or avidya. Likes and dislikes. These, our whole world, if we see what it is, we like something, dislike something, or we are aloof from something. These are only three. If you are aloof, then no problem. Whenever you are aloof from something, it cannot affect you. You are free from that, free from its influence. But when you like or dislike, then starts the cycle. Then you are no longer aloof. Because if you like something, you are attracted towards it. If you dislike something, you go away from it. So you lose your freedom. Things start affecting you now. Okay. So what is this attachment? See, we use the word so often, every day we use. But if someone asks us, define attachment, all we can say is liking. But we cannot at one moment if someone asks, we cannot really analyze it. What is the root? How does it come? How does it grow? So all these things have been thoroughly analyzed in our Indian psychology. So we will just examine these three: attachment, aversion, and clinging to life. Attachment is raga, as I have told you. So again I will share a image. What is the definition of raga? So this is the original sutra and the translation is given below. Sukhanushayi raga. Ragaha. Attachment is that which dwells on pleasure. We are attached to something, we are pulled towards something, we like something. Why? Because we get some sort of pleasure from that. Either physical, mental, whatever you call it. Some sort of peace or pleasure. If we don't get any pleasure from something, we are not attached to that thing. We cannot be. So, attachment is that which dwells on pleasure. This is the very simple definition, but there is a very beautiful analysis which we will go through now. So, here there are three words: Sukha, Anushayi and Raga. So in Sanskrit there is a commentary, as I have told you, explaining these aphorisms. Aphorisms are very, very, in pithy form. Absolutely, they use as few words as possible because it was easy to remember that way. But from the aphorisms we cannot get the meaning in detail. So each aphorism has a commentary. So the commentary on this says that the desire or thirst for or hankering after pleasure or the means leading to it. So not only pleasure, the means leading to it. We want to have a chocolate ice cream, that is, we like it very much, we are attached to it, it gives us pleasure. But if you don't have money, you can't get it. So the means leading to it is money. So that pleasure also attaches us to the means to it, because without the means you can't have it. So desire or thirst or hankering after pleasure or the means leading to it, which is entertained by one who has experienced pleasure. This is another important point. One who has never eaten ice cream before, he does not have any liking or attachment. He is just aloof because he cannot connect to it. He does not know salty, sweet, what it is. He does not know. So he is not attached. Only when one has tasted it before can he be attached or unattached or averse to it. So this desire is not only for the pleasure, but because of that it is also for the means of that pleasure. And third point is it can be entertained only by one who has experienced it and likes it. So this is called raga or attachment. So in Sanskrit it says sukha abhigyasya. Abhigyasya means who has experienced that. Sukha anusmriti purva. This memory is there of that liking. When he sees that ice cream, immediately that memory comes. Oh, I had eaten it 1 week before. I like that. So, sukhe tat sadhaneva. Sadhana is the means. Yo trishna. That trishna. Trishna we all know. That desire. Or lobha. Or greed. That is called raga. So these points we should remember. First, it is based totally on experience. One who has not experienced that cannot have any thirst for that. When we experience it, we like or dislike it, then what happens? When we see that thing again, the previous experience is connected to that. And we remember, oh, this thing I had liked or disliked. So when we like it, that is called attachment. It attaches us to that thing. It forms a mental bond. So whenever we see it next, if we like it, then immediately we will remember our past experience and will be drawn towards that. This is called attachment, and desires are all born from that attachment. We desire only the things which we think will give us pleasure. So raga leads to desiring that thing. So to explain it even in more detail, so what is this attachment? Attachment is desire born of latent impressions of pleasure. Anything we enjoy or anything we dislike, we have discussed that. Any experience leaves an impression on the mind. That impression remains with us forever. Although it may go into the subconscious, but it can again come up. That experience leads us to either desiring something or not desiring something. We connect it, we remember, and then we react. So desire born of latent impressions of pleasure is what is called this raga. And thirst implies a feeling of want for the pleasure enjoyed. As one feels the need of water when he is thirsty. That is the example given. Of course, if we stop at water, then there will be no problem. But we don't stop. So hankering after a thing or greed is that state which brings about a longing to obtain it. This hankering, if not controlled, it gives rise to greed. We want something for living comfortably, for sustaining our life, for doing what we should do, maintaining good health. That is okay. But we don't stop there, unfortunately. We think that those things itself give us pleasure. And we think that the more we have, the more pleasure we will get. That leads to greed. And what happens then? In greed, the sense of right and wrong is generally vitiated. When greed crosses all limits, man loses one's sense of right and wrong. He wants something at any cost. Then he forgets. That desire makes him forget what is wrong, what is right. That is, his discrimination is gone. And here in the original sutra, this another word is there, sukhanushayi. So this word, anushayi, it means following. We have already experienced it. And what follows is that attachment. So word Anushai or following implies that this raga exists as a latent impression in the mind. So in this attachment, what happens? The senses are drawn involuntarily and unconsciously towards object. We are not in control. Some people, suppose they like the smell of any good thing which we eat. And so something is cooking. That smell comes. So involuntary, immediately, we don't tell our nose, go and smell that. It happens itself. We immediately smell and we then begin wiping our tongue and all that and then say that, oh, something good is going to come. So the senses are drawn voluntarily and unconsciously towards object, and when it becomes too much, when this greed becomes too much, the power to restrain those things is also gone away. Then no matter what, we say we want that thing, either by improper means or by proper means. Of course, these are all stages, but it starts from there. It starts from this attachment. That is why attachment is regarded as a kind of misapprehension. Because of this attachment, the self gets linked up with the senses and with the objects. So first we have seen egoism. What does egoism mean? The self first gets attached with the subtle things, the mind. Then through the mind, it gets attached to the organs. Through the organs, it gets attached to the thing to which the organ pertains. It all happens by stages. So actually this attachment is the cause of all our problems. If we are averse to something, actually that is not a problem. We just keep away from it. But problem is when we are attached, then we can't keep away. Then the world takes a hold of us. We lose our freedom. So here the misapprehension is to regard the detached self as bound up with the latent impression of pleasure which we have experienced before, but which actually does not belong to the self. Okay, so first pleasure is enjoyed, an impression is created, that is enkindled by remembrance. When we are in proximity with that object, that generates a longing to have that again. So I have just put it in a chart so it will be easy to follow. So here you can see this is the cycle. This is the cycle. Our whole life is based on this cycle. This is what is making life worth living, we can say. What? First we enjoy something. As soon as this enjoyment starts, the impressions begin to be created. That data is being read by the mind. Cut. Okay. Now, even when the impression is sublated, I eat ice cream, I come out forgotten. But it is not forgotten. It is there in the mind. As soon as we see that ice cream, even if we see a picture, it takes us back. That impression comes from the subconscious to the conscious. Then I feel, oh, I haven't eaten it for a long time. Let me go and eat it now. Because I want to recreate that pleasure. So it is rejuvenated by either memory, I can just remember it. And the worst thing is, if it comes in right in front of me. So either memory or by stimulus, direct stimulus. Then that desire again starts. So the more the pleasure is enjoyed, the more that line of sanskara, what we call that impression, becomes deeper. It is simple, no? Suppose you put in the sand, you create one line. Then after some time, maybe the line is a little shrouded, but before it disappears into the unconscious, so to say, you again create that line. You would make it deeper. Then that again after some days you make another mark on the same place. So what happens? That mark becomes firmer and firmer. And after some time, we find that it is etched so deep that we will not be able to remove it even if we want to do it. Because we ourselves have made it so strong by repeatedly giving ourselves to enjoyments. So what happens in all these bad habits, smoking and all that? Suppose if they start it and if discrimination arises, if they can leave it after a few days, they may succeed in leaving it. But they keep at it. After years and years and years, they find it almost impossible to give it up. Because that sanskara of enjoyment has become extremely deep. Involuntarily, we will be pulled towards that. So the thing is, first, never to start at all. That is the best thing. Bad habits, don't indulge in. Don't smoke, don't drink, and of course all this cannabis, etc. Don't. Suppose we have started it. As soon as discrimination arises, give it up. If we don't do so, then we will be slaves of that habit. Then it will be practically impossible to give it up, because this is the nature. So this has been explained so beautifully. It tells us step by step where are we going. And the next one is comparatively similar, comparatively easier. So I'll just share the image again. So just one word here, one word which is very significant and which has been explained by a commentary. So Sukhanushayi, Anusheta, he has explained as that desire which is sleeping in our mind. Anusheta, he is described in this way. So desire or pleasure which is sleeping. Sleeping means it is not destroyed. When a person is sleeping, you can wake him up any time. So when that impression goes in our mind of that enjoyment, at every time we don't feel that, so it is just sleeping. But it can awaken any time. And when it awakens, we feel a desire for that. So the Bhoja has described it very beautifully. Sukham anusheta iti sukhanushayi. Sukha or that pleasure is sleeping in the mind. And at the proper time, it again wakes up. When it wakes up, then what happens? Sukha sadhaneshu trishna rupa gardha. Then we develop our attraction for that pleasure and for the means also. Sukh as well as sukha sadhana. And that desire is known as trishna. So when that happens, we call it raga. That klesha, that actually pain, it is a pain, that is called raga. And exact opposite of this is dvesha. It is very simple. So I'll just... Here you can see. So we have seen that attachment is that which dwells on pleasure, and aversion is the exact opposite. Aversion is that which dwells on pain. Dukkha anushayi dvesha. It is the exact opposite. So when we experience pleasure, we developed attraction for that is called raga. When we experience pain, then the feeling of pain which we have experienced before, that is again awakened when we come in contact with that object or that person, and that memory of pain leads us to dislike that thing. That is called dvesha. So dukkha anushayi dvesha, and the commentary is absolutely similar, only in place of sukha it replaces with dukkha. So dukkha abhigyasya dukkha anusmriti purva dukhe tat sadhane va yah pratigo manyur jighangsa krodha sadvesha iti. So the translation is, aversion or dvesha is the feeling of opposition, mental disinclination, and if uncontrolled, it leads to the propensity to hurt that person also, if it sufficiently dislike that person, and it leads to anger. So when it leads to all this towards any object, it produces misery. And this recollection of misery, when we come in contact with that person or that thing again, it leads to a feeling of aversion. Oh, let me get away. Let me get away from that person. And if one is evil enough and one is powerful enough, one wants to destroy that thing or destroy that person. Because as soon as he sees him or that thing, that feeling of revulsion comes, dvesha comes, dvesha leads to anger, and anger can lead to anything. So, to translate, here we have seen that dukkhe tat sadhane va yah pratigha. Pratigha means desire to retaliate or resist. To one who has no aversion, to one who has no dislike towards anybody, there is nothing to oppose. You oppose something when? When you dislike that thing. But when one is free from aversion, then there is nothing to oppose at all. He is calm in all circumstances. But to one who is not free, one who has this aversion, then what happens? He opposes something. Opposition comes at every step. And then it leads to what we have seen here, pratigha manyur jighangsa. Jighangsa is terrible. Jighangsa means desire to kill, desire to take revenge. So these happen one after another. Uncontrolled attachment leads to our doing something which may not be proper to get that thing. And uncontrolled aversion leads us to vindictiveness or the desire to even destroy that person or that thing. This is the thing. So both these feelings, if we give way to them, if we don't control them at the very outset, then they can lead to disaster. So as in attachment, so in aversion, the latencies, that impressions, those sanskaras which do not belong to the self are attributed to it because of ignorance, avidya. And the inactive self, the ever blissful self, is regarded as one who does something, one who does not do something, one who likes something, one who does not like something, etc., etc. So one by one, we start to go down, 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 down. The self was happy, blissful, no problem at all. No one to like or dislike. Then it attached itself with the mind. From the mind it came to the organs, then other parts of the body. So one by one it is coming down, and then it suddenly finds itself in the mire of this world. And it finds that it has come so deep, it cannot get out. Then it starts, when it realizes its terrible situation, it starts the work which is needed to get back. That getting back is sadhana, what is all which sadhana is all about. So anyway, dvesha means the repulsion, the anxiety, the wish for removal and the anger at pain and the means thereof, which sticks in the mind in consequence of the feeling of pain being experienced before, that remembrance. The remembrance of pain which we have experienced before, when it is reignited, then we want to remove that cause of pain. So, if it is pertaining to our survival, then there is no problem, like disease. Why are we afraid of disease? Because we have all experienced it before. We know it can make us miserable. Pain here, pain there. So we go to a doctor. That is okay. That is no problem. Because by that, we are not angry or we are not searching for revenge or nothing. But problem becomes when we start directing that feeling towards other things. Just yesterday, when I was coming by car from the Calgary Society to the airport, so one devotee was with me. So the discussion started about things happening in USA. These mass shootings and terrible things are going on, you all know. So he began to get excited, and he began to after 5 minutes, he began shouting practically. Yeah. So when he starts, then he loses control of himself. Now what is the result of all this? Maybe 10 minutes he vented his anger towards people he does not even know, and he could not do anything to improve that. The situation remained as same as before. So all he did was maybe increase his blood pressure. So this is what happens. Many times you see people start sitting at one place, tea, and start gossiping. Oh, you know what this fellow has done, you know what this fellow has done, you know Biden what he is doing, you know what Putin is doing. As if Biden and Putin are your close friends, they are sitting next to you. And after half an hour you become tired and then go home, that's all. After talking nonsense for maybe half an hour. So this is where we spend our energy. When our anger and pain and dislikes and we have no control over, and we don't know where to direct these. We don't even know. How will it hurt Putin if you abuse him here at half an hour, 1 hour? Can you do anything to him? Nothing. So this is all because we are leading our life without discrimination. Going on with the wave. What others are doing, go on doing blindly. Think of what you are doing, where your energy is going. So this attachment and aversion, like an attachment, the same thing happens. Or this fan following, what do we see? Fans of two maybe stars who are not at good terms with each other, they will start fighting in the streets. And by that time, maybe those two stars have become friends. And they will injure themselves. So absolute lunacy, mindless behavior. So these things, when not analyzed, when not controlled, leads to all sorts of problems. So what happens in Many times in soccer fields, what happens? One side loses, of course all the opposing teams are there and the fans are of both the sides. Hurt, injury, so many things are happening. Those fans are fighting. Just imagine. One incident I heard, in India, India and Pakistan, cricket is absolutely frenzy. Mane, you cannot imagine. It is life and death. So once when I read in India or Pakistan, maybe any country, so when they had lost a match in the World Cup, you are out. If you lose one match, you are out. Or maybe it had come to the knockout stage, I don't know. So that he was seeing it on his television. When he saw that the team had lost, he broke his television. Just imagine, when these feelings become out of control, we have nowhere to go. Absolutely slavery and leads to all kind of foolish acts. So this is called raga dvesha. So not that we will not be under the influence of raga dvesha to some extent. Till the body is there, some liking, disliking may be there. It has to be there. But don't let those things take control of our lives. Keep it in their proper place. Then there will be no problems. Even if they exist, there will be no problem. But if we lose our discrimination and let these things guide our lives, then we are gone. We are just puppets. We'll go on doing those things which bring about no good result. It actually disturbs us. If you sit and criticize some person for half an hour, then that thing will go on for the rest of the day. So next we come to the last one. That is very important. I won't go into much detail. One, because there is no time. And another is that this last point is linked to reincarnation. It is a proof of reincarnation. So just a very short this one, and when we discuss reincarnation, then we can discuss it in great detail. So what is the last one? The last one is the clinging to life, which we all know very well. No need to explain at all. Let me share the image again. So it is in front of you. Swara savahi vidisho api tatha ruda abhinivesha. So the third one and the fourth one and the final one, effect of avidya. Avidya, we have seen the effect. Avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. Asmita we have discussed, raga, dvesha we have discussed. The last one is abhinivesha. What does abhinivesha mean? That swara savahi means flowing through its own nature. This means that it is spontaneous. And vidusho abhi. Vidusha means a person who is learned. In female we say vidushi, and in males it is vidusha. So even in the learned, even in the intelligent people, it is aruda. Aruda means established. So this feeling which flows spontaneously through its own nature, and it does not even leave the learned people, intelligent people, discriminating people, that is abhinivesha. Abhinivesha means clinging to life. So we will just discuss it in the light of Swami Vivekananda has given a beautiful example. I mean, go into commentaries or all those details. I'll just quote Swami Vivekananda and we can discuss it. So this abhinivesh or clinging to life is manifest not only in human beings but also in animals. Animals also understand. Actually, even those living beings which cannot move, they also understand. That has been proved by the experience of the great scientist J.C. Bose. And a person has told me he was a person of a saint of a very high order. So he has told me that when you go to a tree to cut it down, the tree knows. It cannot do anything because it is a living being. And when you love those plants, he has shown that if you treat them with love, with kindness, tenderness, that also they understand. So this feeling is everywhere, in every living being. And this is one of the arguments to prove past experience and existence. So I'll just, beautiful examples Swamiji has given, I'll just quote him. He says, for instance, if it be true that all our knowledge comes from experience, then it is sure that which we never experienced, we cannot imagine or understand. This simple. If we have not experienced anything, we cannot have any idea of it. We cannot have any conception of it. He says then, as soon as chickens are hatched, they begin to pick up food. Nobody teaches them. Many times it has been seen where ducks have been hatched by hens, that as soon as they come out of the eggs, they flow to water. They are habitually inclined to water. And the mother thought they would be drowned. If experience be the only source of knowledge, where did these chickens learn to pick up food? Or the ducklings that the water was their natural element? How did those young ducklings who were just born, how did they know that they won't drown in water? If memory is the only source of all our knowledge, then they have no memory. They have just been born. So how does this come? This picking up food and going to water naturally, if they have not done it before? So this goes to prove past experience. So if Swamiji says, if you call it instinct, what will you say? Oh, it is instinct. The duck goes to the water by instinct, the newborn. So Swamiji says, if you say it is instinct, it means nothing. It is simply giving a word, but it is not an explanation. What is this instinct? How to define instinct? So he says, we have many instincts in ourselves. Then he goes to define it. For instance, he was speaking in America. So he says, most of you ladies play the piano. And remember when you first learned how carefully you had to put your fingers on the black and white keys. Any instrument, when we start playing, and when we start driving, how carefully, this is the clutch, this is the brake, that is the gear, this slowly, do everything slowly. But now, after long years of practice, you can talk with your friends while your fingers play mechanically. The result of practice. This has become instinct, Swamiji says. So with every work we do, by practice, it becomes automatic. And that is called instinct. So all instinct is therefore the result of past experience. If you have not played the piano at all, how can that instinct come? And this goes to prove that those who are geniuses from very young age, they take to some instrument, they take to some game naturally. How did this happen? It just shows that they had done this many times before. Otherwise, they could not have done that so effortlessly. So he says, all instinct is therefore the result of past experience. Chickens fear the hawk and ducklings love the water. These are both the results of past experience. Then the question is whether that experience belongs to a particular soul or to the body simply. Whether this experience which comes to the duck is the duck's forefathers' experience or the duck's own experience. Or some people may say that that experience has been inherited. Swamiji says then what it is? Is it inherited experience or is it the duck's own experience? Modern scientific men hold that this is inheritance, it belongs to the body. But the yogis, that the yoga psychology, they hold that it is the experience of the mind which is transmitted through the body. And that mind you, our minds don't change. Our minds have been the same. All our past birth. And those carry all the impressions. And when we say, when the yogis say that these experiences of the mind remain in the mind and are transmitted through each body which we assume, that is nothing but the theory of reincarnation. So this clinging to life, this fear of death, what is this then? Abhinivesha means what? Abhinivesha means let me always exist. Let me never be dead or cease to exist. That is Abhinivesha. So this life, identification with the mind and body, I am living in this body, this we want to hold on to. That is why we experience the fear of death. If death is coming, we are afraid. So the recurring experience of various fears in course of time produces this clinging to life. So Swamiji says that if you have not experienced death before, how can you be afraid of it? If you have not eaten a chocolate ice cream before, how can you like it? Only when you eat it once, then either you like or dislike. So when you are afraid of something instinctively, this means what? It has become instinct only because of past experiences. That is all what instinct is. It has been ingrained into our nature because we have experienced it so many times. That is why he says the recurring experiences of various fears in course of time produce this abhinivesha or clinging to life. That is why the child is instinctively afraid, because the past experience of pain is there in it. Even in the most learned men who know that this body will go, we have to die one day, who say, never mind, we have had hundreds of bodies, the soul cannot die. They may say those things, but even in them, with all their intellectual convictions, we still find this clinging on to life. We can say hundreds of times, oh, I have been born this, but when death comes, we forget everything. That fear cannot go. Why is this clinging to life? We have seen that it has become instinctive. In the psychological language of the yogis, it has become a sanskara. Sanskara we have already discussed. When some impression is created again and again and again in the mind, it becomes very deep. The same sanskara becomes deeper and deeper and deeper when those experiences recur again and again and again. So we are born, we again die, we are again born. So we have died so many times and experienced pain when we die that this feeling has become instinctive. So as soon as the word death is mentioned, we become afraid. So that is why he says in the psychological language of the yogis, it has become a sanskara. The sanskaras, fine and hidden, are sleeping in the mind. They are all there. All this past experience of death, all that which we call instinct, is experience which has become subconscious. It has simply gone down to deeper levels of the mind, but it has not disappeared. It cannot disappear. It lives in the mind, Swamiji says. The chitta is the storehouse which has infinite capacity. And all those impressions are there. But some may be on the surface, some may be below. It lives in the mind or the chitta and is not inactive. It is working underneath. And when the time comes, it produces an action or reaction in us. That is the thing. This is called abhinivesha. So, our psychologists say that if you have not died before, you cannot have the fear of death. So we are afraid of death. Why? Because we have died before. And if we have died before, naturally we have lived before. Without living you cannot die. So this means that we have had previous lives. Because experience, as we have seen, experience is the source of all our knowledge. Be it likes or dislikes or being neutral. So it is a very, very simple proof that even before this life, we have had many lives. And even after this life, we will have many lives if we cease to identify ourselves until we cease to identify ourselves with the mind and body. Till we go on identifying with these things, there will be no end. This cycle will continue. That is called the cycle of birth and death.
I read a poem on death. The poet challenges death, that you cannot scare me. People like sleep, I'll sleep forever.
Yeah, but when death will really come, I don't know what that poet will say. So anyway, so let us stop here today. Then please be, or those who are online, please be here for one moment. Just a small announcement about next week. So let us end here for now. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Panastu.